So here we are at my UFC 302 parlay for maximum profit. Now on the year so far, we are 1 for 2 on Hail Mary parlays. We should be 2 for 1. But Vitor Petrino, who had every single physical advantage you possibly can have against Anthony Smith, except for submissions, decided it would be a good idea to put his neck into a guillotine. That, I don't know if I will ever fully recover from that one. I have had multiple nights waking up in cold sweats from a nightmare of reliving that moment when I saw Vitor shoot that double leg. That was atrocious. But here we are trying again. If something that traumatic happens to me again, honestly, this will probably be my last YouTube video, but here we go. The very first fight of the night is Andre Lima versus Mitch Raposo. Now, for those who don't know, Mitch Raposo, he fought on The Ultimate Fighter. He was on Team McGregor, so, didn't go very well for him. Andre Lima, in his last fight, he got his arm chomped on. I'm not sure if you guys remember that one. That was something to see right there. I mean, biting your opponent, it's kind of cool when Mike Tyson does it, but if you're some unknown flyweight, that was just kind of stupid. But both of these guys are fairly new to the UFC. Both are very well-rounded. Andre Lima should be on the parlay for this fight. He's taller. He's a lot longer. He is so good with straight shots right down the middle. He's got very good timing. Mitch is going to be a bit quicker, but he likes to strike as well. He can wrestle, but primarily he likes to strike. But he's going to be a step behind in that department against Lima. He's going to need to try to find a way to close the distance, which I don't think he can do reliably. Even if he does land, he doesn't have a ton of power. I imagine if he tries, he will be able to get a few takedowns, but Lima's takedown defense, it's not terrible. He's good off his back, and he has really good get-ups from guard, so Lima, he will be on the parlay. And now we got Basel Hafez versus Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall, of course, famous for beating up CM Punk. Basel Hafez, he fought Jack Della Maddalena, and he lost a split decision. It was a very, very close fight. To be honest, the reason it was a split decision was because Jack kept jumping guillotines, which was ill-advised, but still, Hafez had really good defense. He's jacked. I mean, this guy is huge. He's very good on the ground. He's got good power. And honestly, I do not know why Mickey Gall took this fight. I think as far as locks go, this is probably the biggest lock on the entire card. Gall has made some improvements to his striking, without a doubt, but still, defensively, he's not super sound. He's pretty hittable, and you do not want to get hit by Hafez. His A game is 100% jiu-jitsu, it still is, but he's going to be so physically outmatched here, it's going to be really difficult for him to impose his ground game on Hafez. And now, if history is to repeat itself, because I said that, Basil's going to shoot a terrible shot and get guillotined. And if that happens, trust me, you will never hear from me ever again. But other than that, Basel Hafez, he's on the parlay. He should be a lock. And now, Nico Price versus Alex Morono. Now, I'm just going to come right out the gate with this one. This one is not going anywhere near the parlay. Alex Morono, I'm a big fan of. He is very, very, very skillful. He's not an athlete by any means. That I'm sure you can tell by just looking at him. In pretty much every single fight he has at a strength, speed, and power disadvantage. And when he fights guys like Michal Pereira or Joaquin Buckley, that gap is usually too much. But in a lot of his other fights, he gets away with it by just being so skillful and technical. And he had actually fought Nico Price before, all the way back in 2017. And for the first 2 rounds, he was dominating the fight. Just skill for skill, he was a step ahead of Price. Using his movement to stay just out of range, timing really good shots, he even dropped Nico twice. But towards the very end of the second round, Nico really started picking up the pace and just going at him. And pretty much at the buzzer, lands a shot that knocked him out. Now, this fight was ruled a no contest because they found marijuana in Nico Price's system, which, God, I feel bad for the guy. That sucks. But the question is now, what has changed from that fight to this current one? Honestly, not much. I mean, put a gun to my head, I'm going with Alex Morono. He really is just more skillful. But he fights the same as he fought back then. I mean, his game hasn't changed. There hasn't been massive improvements. So look, that knockout danger is always going to be there if Price blitzes him. I mean, there just has not been any significant improvements defensively for me to say I don't think that'll happen again. But at the same time, like I said, Morono is the better fighter. He's more skillful. So it's not going on the parlay. And next we have Phil Rowe versus Jake Matthews. And this is another one that it's a little too close for comfort to go on the parlay. Phil, I'm leaning towards to win. Both of these guys are primarily strikers. Phil, he's 6'3". He's a lot taller and longer. I think his striking is a bit cleaner. But the thing that really worries me about him is he does not do a great job maintaining distance in a lot of his fights. Shorter opponents regularly get on the inside against him. He typically does a good job defensively from there, just kind of covers up and moves back to range. But, I mean, still, that is what Jake Matthews is going to be looking to do, is just get on the inside. And I don't think Phil's going to be stopping him. But on the outside at range, Rowe, he's just slicker, quicker. And I do believe he'll win, but it's a real close one. It's a real close one. I can't say I feel super confident about that pick. I don't know if it'll go on the parlay. Rowe is the underdog, so there's some value there adding him, but like I said, add him at your own risk. And now we have Grant Dawson versus Joe Solecki. You gotta go with Grant Dawson here. Both of these guys are very grappling heavy. Solecki's jiu-jitsu is really, really good. I mean, his back takes and his control from the back is super high level. But at the absolute worst, Grant Dawson's ground game, it's comparable, and he is the better striker. I mean, no question there. Like I said, Solecki is dangerous with those back takes, but if he happens to get there, I don't think he'll be able to finish him. And I think Dawson is the better wrestler, and he's going to struggle getting him to the ground. So I think this is a pretty simple one. Grant Dawson will be going on the parlay. And now this next one is really, really interesting. Cesar Almeida versus Roman Kopylov. Cesar Almeida was a glory kickboxer. He fought Alex Pereira 3 times. The first fight, Pereira won by decision. The second fight, Almeida won by decision. And then the third fight, Pereira won by decision. So, this will be his very first fight in the UFC, which is interesting. One thing I will say that is super surprising, in his Contender Series fight, his takedown defense and his get-ups from the bottom were surprisingly really, really good, which is very rare for a kickboxer of his accolades only 5 fights into his career. But Roman Kopylov is a striker, and he is a very high-level striker. I don't think we'll be seeing any takedowns in this fight. But as crazy as this is to say, I think for MMA, Kopylov is the better striker. He himself has been striking ever since he was a little kid. He's from Russia, so of course he competed in hand-to-hand combat sambo, which I think is a little different than regular sambo. I believe that's just striking. I could be wrong. But he really is so high level on the feet. One issue I do see there with Cesar Almeida is his kickboxing style is very tailored around covering up and moving forward, which when you have those big kickboxing gloves is much more effective than in MMA. And because of that, I do think he's more hittable than someone like Pereira or Adesanya is. So overall, I think Kopylov, I think he's the safe pick here. But stylistically, I am so excited for this fight. Other than the main co-main, this is the fight I am most looking forward to. And now we're moving on to the main card. We have Randy Brown versus Alizu Zaleski dos Santos. Now, dos Santos, for those who don't know, fought Benoit Saint-Denis in his UFC debut. Benoit took the fight on short notice, and he got brutalized by dos Santos. I mean, this referee who did that fight, he got suspended because of how much damage he let Benoit Saint-Denis take. I just remember Paul Felder screaming at the referee to stop the fight as Benoit was clearly out on his feet just taking damage. But in this matchup, you got to go Randy Brown. Both of these guys are strikers, but Randy Brown is taller, longer, he's going to be a lot faster, and his straight shots and his movement are so good. Now, I will say, if Brown ends up getting taken down, I'm not a huge fan of him off his back. He kind of stalls out from there, but his takedown defense is pretty good. Dos Santos is going to have the edge in the grappling, but at heart, both of these guys are strikers. And nothing I've seen from Dos Santos tells me he's going to be able to close the distance between them super effectively. So Randy Brown 100% is going on the parlay. And now we got Jailton Almeida versus Alexander Romanov. Now, Jailton Almeida, he just did get knocked out by Curtis Blades, but man, I am still so impressed at how he was able to get those takedowns against him. I mean, Curtis Blades was an NCAA wrestler. He had a huge size advantage, which, was the reason he was able to get that knockout from hammer fists. But still, Almeida was so quick and so explosive with those takedowns. I really didn't think he was going to have that much success in the grappling. I didn't think it was going to come that easy. But he has a very interesting matchup against Alexander Romanov because he is one of the few heavyweights that is very takedown heavy himself. But unlike Curtis Blades, who just his frame is built to be a heavyweight, this guy, he kind of has that Chris Dawkins kind of, really fat build. And because of that, he's not super explosive, and he has a real cardio problem. I mean, he gasses out pretty much in round one of almost all of his fights, unless he paces himself very well, which he has started doing recently. The problem for him against Almeida is, Almeida will really put the pace on him, and I will be shocked if Romanov can keep up with him. I mean, if he's able to, the only logical solution would be he started taking meldonium or something. If Almeida puts him on his back, I think he's going to have some serious problems getting back up. He doesn't have the power of someone like Blade, so I don't think Almeida needs to be worried about getting knocked out from short hammer fists again. And Jailton, he's just going to be so much quicker, so much more explosive. He's going to have a massive cardio advantage. And Almeida is a no-brainer. He's going on the parlay. And now we have Kevin Holland versus, I believe it's pronounced Michal Oleksiejczuk. Now, I'm just going to say this. Michal's fight against We'll just call him Chidi, this guy right here. That fight was crazy. I mean, Chidi was so sharp from the outside, hitting him with teeps and head kicks and these vicious knees to the body, but Michal just kept marching into the pocket and eventually landed, really hurt him, and then finished him on the ground. Michal took some serious punishment in that fight. But to me, this is another no-brainer. Kevin Holland is just a gimme on this one. Kevin Holland, he's coming off some losses, but, to be fair to him, both of those losses were pretty much against the exact same style. Against Wonderboy and then against MVP. That karate blitz style. He was the favorite going into his fight against MVP. And that blew me away. I did not understand how... I don't understand how the odds makers came up with that, because we saw him fight that karate blitz point fighting style, and he could not handle it. He could not time the blitz for the life of him. And exactly what happened against Wonderboy happened against MVP. But as far as boxing defense goes, Kevin Holland is very, very good. You look at his fight against Joaquin Buckley, who was just trying to get into the pocket and just throw these crazy haymakers, and Holland stayed so defensively sound. And we know Michal, that's what he's going to try to do. He's going to try to close the distance, get into punching range, but I don't think he's going to have a lot of success from there. And I think Holland is going to be very dangerous with those straight shots. I think Holland is probably going to knock him out. If not, he's 100% going to win. I will be shocked if he doesn't. And he is on this parlay without a doubt. And now, Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa. I made a full breakdown for this fight already, so if you want, you can check that out. But to give you the cliff notes here, Sean Strickland is the safe pick. Paulo Costa is not very skillful. He relies very heavily on attributes and athleticism, and those he certainly has. But, defensively, he gets hit a lot. But offensively, he's very, very good. He's not super technical, but he throws fast. He has really good kicks. That is one thing I will give him. Super, super good kicks. And honestly, I do see a weakness in Strickland's game where he's vulnerable to high kicks if he cannot pressure his opponent. So look, I think Paulo Costa, with the correct, disciplined game plan, can 100% win this fight by just holding the center, fighting behind a long jab, and throwing body and head kicks. He cannot try to box with Sean Strickland. Sean's boxing defense is way too good. He's going to avoid everything, and he's going to butcher Paulo Costa's face open with jabs. So look, I really, really think Paulo Costa can beat Sean Strickland. But Sean Strickland all around is far more skillful, and let's just call it how it is. I do not trust Paulo Costa in the slightest at sticking to a correct game plan. He looked good against Robert Whittaker. He had a very good game plan there. But his fights prior, that Luke Rockhold fight, that was bad. That was bad. He really got exposed for his lack of skill there. So honestly, look, I don't know, maybe you can get creative with some of the other bets you can add, like maybe past a round and a half maybe, but this one for me, I'm not picking a winner or loser for the parlay. And now to the main event, Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev. I've got 2 videos sort of talking about this matchup. One, I dissect into great detail the problem with Dustin Poirier's guillotines and whether or not he could possibly finish one on Islam. And then I just broke down the matchup for what it is. Both those videos are shown right here, but it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. This fight is pretty much as much of an uphill battle as you can possibly get for Dustin Poirier. Islam Makhachev on the feet is very, very skillful. He's so well-rounded, and what makes him so good is he's so risk-adverse. He never overextends on punches. He never brawls with you in the pocket. Because he's so well-rounded, he's so good at just making you fight where you're the worst at, like no matter what your skill set is. Now, Dustin does have some entries that I do like. One that he does really well, he throws a jab. And as he's jabbing, he takes a step forward to switch from southpaw to orthodox. And then he catches you by surprise with the overhand, which you didn't see coming because you didn't realize he switched stances in the middle of the jab. He was able to catch Khabib very cleanly with that setup, but it really is a Hail Mary. Pretty much any scenario Dustin Poirier wins is a Hail Mary. It was funny. In my breakdown for the fight, I said Dustin's got one shot, and that is if he can catch Islam with his feet crossed while he has his back taken to try to go for an ankle lock. And so many people thought it was just insane that I even thought that was worth bringing up, as if Islam would tap to that, even though I said in the video that there's no way Islam would tap to it, and that this is just showing how insanely desperate we are for picking a path to victory for Dustin. Yeah, that's the point. It's ridiculous, because how else is Dustin going to reliably win this fight skill for skill? It's borderline impossible. Dustin's one advantage is pure boxing, which is negated by Islam just not boxing with him, just staying on the outside and only throwing kicks. And the second Dustin tries to close the distance to box, and just shoot a takedown. That is all it takes for Dustin's A game to pretty much get negated. So with all that being said, I'm sure you could already tell by now, I am adding Dustin Poirier by guillotine onto the parlay.